Who's the chair for the
Pirates?
Carrie, yes.
It's such a cool.
Makes me think of Portland, Oregon.
It'd be a Portland, Oregon type song.
4 o'clock in the morning. Ready? Okay, let's get this show rolling. We have a full docket tonight. Welcome everyone to the presentations for fiscal year 2020. At this point, because we've got a lot of new faces, I would like for everyone to, we can go around a circle, introduce ourselves, and then I'm going to pass it over to David to do the majority of the talking. And we get to sit and listen. I'm Laidley. I'm the chair of the select board. John, you want to go?
I'm John. I'm a selectman.
Dave, Selectmen.
John Williams, Budget Committee.
Carrie Schwal, Chair of the Budget Committee.
Patria Allen, Budget Committee.
Scotty Lampier, Budget Committee.
Jason Trumby, Budget Committee.
Tell them who you are, Bernard.
Oh, I won't listen, I'm sorry, I was reading. What do you want to know?
Your name.
Who you are and what you're doing here.
Oh, okay. Bernard Young, Road Commissioner.
Dave Kinney, Town Administrator.
Kayla Lacombe, Finance Director.
Josh Garrison, Selectman.
Kern Lake, Heidi's husband, Vice Chair.
Selectman.
What is Valentine's Day coming up and you forgot?
Nothing.
All right, David, it's your show.
Thanks and welcome. Before we get started, I want to make sure everybody has a first draft of the fiscal year 20 budget. When we get into it, in future versions, the lower left-hand corner of this draft says February 11th, because that's when it was finished yesterday. And that may change, and we'll always want to make sure we're all working off the same up-to-date document when we get there. So that's a little housekeeping. Also in the front has the schedule for tonight and tomorrow night. The times on that are approximate. The pages on that should be correct. We're gonna, in true local government fashion, we're gonna start in the middle and then work our way to the end, and then start at the beginning tomorrow and work our way to the other end. Primarily because we had a lot of people that could make it to make presentations tonight that couldn't make it tomorrow night. So I won't bore you to death with my voice tonight as much as I will tomorrow. Just a few little highlights or lowlights or changes. The first draft of the budget, and I'm going to keep saying first draft because it will change. To back up before I get into the budget message much. The purpose of tonight and tomorrow night is just to hear what the various department heads and committee chairs and others, what their desires are. And it isn't to make changes to the budget. It isn't to add or subtract anything. It's just to listen and ask questions. So if I get rambling and you have a question and I'm not paying attention, holler out, "Hey Dave," or something like that, and we'll stop and we'll get your question answered. After the selectmen have heard the 2 nights of budget presentations, they will, in the coming weeks, make changes, either additions or deletions to the budget. They'll fill in a column that has for selectmen's recommendations, and they're currently scheduled on March, whatever their first meeting in March is, I think it's the 11th, to finalize their recommendations, and then a revised budget will be presented to the budget committee for their consideration and their recommendations. Late in March, you make your recommendations either late April or early May, and then it'll go off to town meeting in the town meeting warrant. Certainly, if you have some questions while you're here, like I said earlier, ask. If you have questions when you get a chance to delve into this, when you're having trouble sleeping and you need something to clear your head and you want to look at the budget in the evenings ahead, don't call me too much in the evening, but certainly feel free to call me the next day with whatever questions you have. We'll do our best to either give you an answer right off the cuff or look it up for you. So with that, the first draft, there is an overall spending increase proposed, but a decrease from the property taxpayers for municipal services. And we're gonna get into the details of all that over the next 2 nights. One of the keys that you'll find in here, we have 53 pay periods coming in the upcoming fiscal year. So for most of our employees that work here in the town office or our part-time employees, we get paid on Tuesday. From July 1 of 19 through June 30 of 20, there's actually 53 Tuesdays. So some of the payroll numbers will be appear inflated by roughly 2% greater than they would have been should have been a 52 pay week year. That happens, I don't know, every 7, 8, 10 years or something, just the fluke of the way it is. But we'll keep that in mind, and I'll point that out more when we get to the circumstances where that pops up in the budget. The budget as proposed is well under the LD1 property tax levy limit. Oh, probably a dozen years or so ago now, it was in the Baldacci administration. They passed a property tax cap measure in Augusta, which became part of the law, and it has a mechanism that what's asked of the property taxpayers can only go up to a certain limit without them approving more. And being the voters, for Lincolnville, that would be town meeting voters. We have an article every year at town meeting that asks that question. If you recall, for the last several years, I've said we're allowed to pass over this article or indefinitely postpone because we're well under the cap. The first couple of years we were up against it pretty tightly, but just the way the formula is written, we're well below it, to the tune of almost $200,000 underneath. So it's very unlikely that the budget will be adjusted, that will be impacted by that limit. However, town meeting does have the opportunity to do whatever they want in terms of spending, so if we ever got to that, we'd have to ask town meeting to approve what they'd already done. We won't talk too long on that. We're in year 2. Well, this budget will be year 2 of our 5-year winter road maintenance contract. The contract price has a 3% escalator in it, or the contract has a 3% escalator in it. Even with that, we'll be lower than we were a year ago this time with the contract in terms of pricing. Recreation, who's on a little later tonight, got a couple of relatively big changes. We had a special town meeting regarding ball field maintenance to appropriate some additional money for the current fiscal year. They're looking to continue that program throughout the entire fiscal year coming up. And they're also proposing a new recreation opportunity, namely pickleball. So there's some expenses included in the budget for that. And I do want to highlight that these things that I'm bringing out now are kind of some of the more major items. Everything's important that we spend money on. It's how we, where we spend it is our biggest policy document of the year, the budget. How we choose to spend other people's money. Capital improvement program is primarily items that you have all seen in the past. Things like the fire truck fund, building repair fund, road and harbor improvement funds. We do have a new item this year. The Selectmen have put forth a committee called the Solar Array Purchase Committee. If you recall, in 2016, a special town meeting approved a power purchase agreement that allowed Revision Energy to construct a solar array, which is next to our fire station. We now buy electricity from Revision Energy versus from the standard offer or some electricity supplier. We have an opportunity to purchase that array. The power purchase agreement said we had the opportunity to buy it after the 6th year of production. That apparently has changed now that we can opt to purchase that in year 5. The recommendation from that committee was that we consider purchasing it. We start setting aside money in anticipation of that purchase. They rolled out last night at the Selectmen's meeting that the sooner you buy it, the more you save in terms of the life of it. And John's gonna correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they rolled out, if you bought it after year 5, which will be our first opportunity, that the savings to the town over the life of it would be $224,000.
Yeah.
Even if we continue with what we're doing now, there's savings to the town versus the standard offer, but the savings aren't as great. So we'll talk more about that when we get to that. Budget doesn't alter staffing levels. We're not looking to create any positions in the town. It does include a slight reduction in the parking enforcement. We'll talk about that more when we get there. The first draft of the budget does carry an adjustment to wages of 2.8% to mirror what was changed in Social Security for Consumer Price Index for the current year. And one position, Finance Director, will be eligible for a step on our step scale as well. We'll talk about that more when we get to Administration and Finance tomorrow night. Do list out in the budget message what the changes in terms of wage percentages has been for the last 9 years within the budget message. One item of particular concern is municipal revenue sharing. That has been, for lack of a better word, municipal revenue share, let's back up a little bit, is state taxes that they collect, income and sales taxes. A percentage of that had been shared, well, is currently, but had been 5% of that had been shared with municipalities via a formula that they have in Augusta. I'm just gonna put it nicely and blunt and say over the last 10 years or so, that fund has been rated. The law says 5%, the legislature changes the law, it says, oh, 3%, 2%, whatever. We now receive about 40% of what we should be receiving if the legislature hadn't rated the fund. The new administration is talking about, or carried in the budget, increasing that percentage upwards. I think their goal over time is to get back to 5%. But right now, the new budget, which is subject to all sorts of debate and discussion, Augusta has gone from 2% of income tax and sales to 2.5%. And then the next year will go to 3%. So in round numbers, we get $100,000 now. We should get 200 and some odd thousand. I would anticipate that's going to go up some each year. Number of years ago, when the in Governor LePage's administration, he proposed eliminating revenue sharing in its entirety. That year, we budgeted $0 for revenue sharing because there was too much uncertainty. We didn't know if it was going to get approved at what level. We went through that year at 0, and then since that time, we've been putting in the budget what we actually received the prior year, so we knew we had the money. The money was already here and in the bank. The auditors weren't real fond of that method, so they've suggested to us that we put the monies in the budget that we've received plus what we're anticipating receiving. So when we get to revenues tomorrow, you'll see a change in that number as well. Town charter requires that we include a statement about our debt service or our debt position. The town is currently in debt for the school construction. The school took out a loan for an automation system for their heating and ventilating system, and we have a road bond. The school debt will be retired in fiscal year 2025, the automation 2021, and the road bond 2023. We are a little under $3 million in debt total. We are so far below what we're allowed to be, and nobody in this room would be comfortable at the ceiling allowed to us by state law for debt. So we won't talk a whole lot more about that. We're also asked to estimate how much anticipated change in our taxable valuation will be. Roundabout number, somewhere about $2 million on just under $400 million worth of value. So if you add up all the taxable value in town, we say it's 387 million something, I think. So that kind of concludes the bigger ticket items. I'm going to jump into the budget a little bit and flip quickly to page 3, which looks like this. I'm going to tell you while you're all getting there, the budget format for anybody that's been here before is pretty near identical what you've seen before. I know we have some people that haven't sat through this before. Welcome, Patria. It should be pretty straightforward. All the budgets or pages, subsequent budget pages are set up like this, where we'll have the account name in the upper left-hand corner, working across the page from left to right, a description of what the account is, what we actually spent in fiscal year 18, what the current budget is, what we expended through half of our budget year, the percent of what that expenditure through half the year is, what the request for the coming year is, the percent change or no change, if there is any. That's the request over what was approved for the current year. And then we'll have columns for the Selectmen's recommendation and the percent change, the Budget Committee's recommendation, percent change, and then what's approved at town meeting. It's probably important to note as we get going on the subject, although we talk about what's been expended through a half year, our expenses they're not linear. Some of our accounts are what I would say front-loaded. I'll use an example we'll talk about just a minute when we get into the Public Works, Highways and Bridges budget. Paving. We do paving in the summer, primarily at the start of the fiscal year. So when we look at paving, we're going to look at the work that's been done. We're unlikely to do a whole lot of paving between now and July 1. We might do some patching or some repairs, but we're not going to pave any more streets. So when you look at the percentage, you're going to see a large percentage of that paving money's already been expended. That's because it's what I would call front-loaded in the year. A little later tonight, we'll talk about some harbor expenses. Harbor expenses seem to be more loaded in the spring, so some of those expenses might not be, but it gives you a guide to see where we are. Woo. I've already talked Paul right out of the room. So with that, the first budget we're going to talk about tonight is Highways and Bridges. It's part of Public Works. It's page 15 in your budget. Bernard Young is here as the road commissioner. Before we jump into Bernard, does anybody got any right off the cuff questions? Or am I talking too fast, too much? Too much. I'll get used to it.
Dave, out of curiosity, what is the limit for debt for towns and state? Is there a state limit on
Yeah,
that?
the state statute, it is, I won't say it's not convoluted, but it's broken down into municipal if you have an airport, you get a certain allowance above your state valuation. School debt can be, Kayla's making a note as we speak to have me get that for you.
I mean, it's more of a curiosity.
It would
than
be,
a-
I bet we could be $10 or $12 million in debt,
Jeez. Well, yeah.
maybe more, total. And it just.
And that's for all the municipalities,
Yeah,
give or
it's
take,
a-
depending on if they have an airport and all that.
What it is the state does what's called a state valuation. They assign each town a taxable valuation.
Yeah.
And then you're allowed a certain percentage for municipals of that valuation.
Right.
And a certain percentage of that for schools, and a certain percentage of that for wastewater treatment plants, and a certain
Yeah.
percentage of that for airports. And I would not be comfortable sitting in this seat if we were up against that cap or anywhere near it. None of us would.
I understand.
But they don't want, obviously, they don't want towns,
Pushing it, but it's
pushing it too
it's good
far.
to know we're way below.
Yeah. Well, Lincolnville has a frugal history.
Okay.
That way. All right, so within highways and bridges, working, everybody's on page 15, hopefully. The first lines as we work down the first column is road commissioner stipend. We pay our road commissioner a generous stipend for the hours he puts in.
Thank you.
You'll note as you work across that first line, we did make it an adjustment in the fiscal year 19 budget, the current budget year, based on, we have a wage and personnel committee that assisted the board by rewriting job descriptions and then tried to get some comparisons to some other places and made a recommendation. So that wage was adjusted, and it's proposed, as I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, to adjust that again by 2.8%, so everybody can see how that wage would change in the coming year. Working down the page before we give Bernard the microphone, we have part-time wages. We do hire laborers periodically for flagging or for helping us mulch or putting up signs.
Repair work, whatever.
Yeah, whatever we do, you can see, just so everybody, I'm trying to familiarize everybody with the format. We budgeted $7,000 this year. Through a half a year, we'd expended 68% of that, or $4,793. We're budgeting $7,000 for the coming year. FICA and Medicare that you'll see throughout this document is just a straight calculation. It's 7.65% of the wage. So that's required of us. Maybe before we talk a little bit about machineries and materials, I'll let Bernard give you a little description about some of the things he may be thinking for the coming year and what we do with machineries and materials, and I'll supplement him and stop talking.
I thought you were doing pretty good.
I am.
We'll be going in road graders and machinery to do ditching. There's always ditching to be done. And labor. I don't know if I'm gonna rent a road grader this year or what I'm gonna do, because we don't have one to have right now. That's past history. And trucks and whatever it does to take the move material to the job sites. And that would be about the standard of the machinery.
Yeah,
Well, we're going into a mud season, so we are gonna get into quite a lot of expense here. There's been a lot of salt put on gravel roads this year. And they'll turn to mud if we have a week of soft weather. And we got about, 6 miles left since we got done of the road?
We have
Maybe
one
near 7.
maybe near 8, but
Very near 8. But we've done a good job. Got quite a lot of roads tied in the last 2 years. So we're gaining.
one of the things that we upped this year from our discussion, Bernard, was tree and brush removal.
Right, they'll come under that
Yep, that's under machinery.
machinery. because trees seem to keep coming out in the road every year. And more so, seems so, as the trees get bigger. So, like I told Dave the other day, to increase the tree cutting. And anything else you can think of, Dave?
No.
You want to add to that, Mr. David?
Just a little bit. If you look under machinery where you see in the top quarter of the page, it just says machinery and a number. And then
Yeah.
about halfway down the page, you'll see a rough breakdown of where we think that money will be expended in the course of the year. You'll see that format throughout the budget, where the top in the table format will just be basically a summary number. And then down below will be a breakdown of anticipated expenses.
Oh, I see, that's down here.
Beyond that, a number of these things are just annual roadside mowing. We mow the sides of the road to provide a safe shoulder and try to keep the brush down and back. We have crosswalk painting down at the beach and one here in the center where when DOT redid the Main Street, or not Main Street, Route 1, they painted crosswalks and we agreed to take on the ongoing maintenance of those or upkeep of those. And we painted one here in the center a couple years ago and we refreshed those. Materials, you want to talk some about materials, Brendan?
Dave, just
Yeah.
a quick question on the machinery.
Yep.
Do you rent them? Like, for example, bulldozer, backhoes, $2,000? Like, is that just for the fuel maintenance of that, or do we own those machines?
We
or-
don't own any rolling equipment besides fire trucks.
Okay, so then that's a rental. fee.
Everything's contracted. Some equipment we rent limited. Most of it we contract out by the day or the hour.
Yeah, like road graders and street cleaners and everything like that.
Okay.
Sweepers, the sidewalks and everything's all rented property from some renter, where we can find a place to rent the piece of equipment. On that. Yeah, you said you wanna go to material, let's take up someone else to ask. Any questions on equipment?
That's fine.
Okay.
You go to-
So we've got, I'll run quick, gravel, culverts, riprap, if anybody didn't know, riprap is just stone that we use to line the ditches and line culvert inlets and outlets. Gold patch, crack sealing, reclaim is ground up pavement that we use in some wash areas because it holds a little better. And gravel is not only for our gravel roads, but where we repave a road, we hire a shoulder box, which places the gravel along the shoulder.
Yeah, and all that,
So,
yeah,
I have a question on materials.
sure.
So, I see the materials, line for fiscal year 20 is less than fiscal year 19 by about $2,500. But I see that the gravel that we had stockpiled is just about gone. Does that replace that, and are we taking into consideration that maybe we're gonna have to have more because of road damage, because the winters, we're only in February.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I cannot get gravel up there, it's froze over 3 feet deep this winter.
Okay,
So we got gravel coming in the next couple of weeks. Dave called,
yeah,
fella give us a good price, 13 on it.
Yeah. We're gonna be restockpiling out of the current year's budget,
yeah,
and we'll have ample for spring, and so this is what we anticipate for the.
so that actually anticipates replenishing what we had in stock.
No, this will be, what we bring in for the stockpile,
Yeah,
a lot of it's probably gonna go out this spring, depending on what we have for a spring season.
yeah,
But this request will be for the shoulders on Youngtown Road, which is what we're proposing to pave, we're gonna talk about in a minute. And then to do what we're doing on these gravel roads, same thing we're doing this year, but next spring. That's what this material will be.
Okay, so to replace what we need to replace over here, is that in 2019's budget?
Yeah, if you look up
Okay.
at 2019 under materials,
Yep.
we budgeted $86,000.
Yep.
We spent 32,
Okay.
and some change. We've got at least 1,000 yards of material coming in, and perhaps more depending on how good we are at stockpiling it over there. So we're gonna, that 32 is gonna be 60, well, not 60, but close in a couple weeks.
And riprap.
Yep.
Do we stock a lot of that?
No.
We don't?
Well, we just use it around, we put a culvert in, we kind of, they look at us now to put riprap around the culverts, down the banks, on account of DEP and washing and everything, so it's, gee, we don't use no more than 200-300 yards a year, riprap.
Yeah,
Would we as a town be better served, and maybe this is a conversation for another time, but I just kind of wonder,
No.
in problem areas, like maybe up on, as the road goes from Broadest Road to Heather Hill, that corner right there, instead of gravel on the inside, would it be, we'd be better served as to use riprap? Because I think that's washed out a couple times, hasn't it?
On the in-
And then again up on Moody Mountain.
On the inside corner, we don't own the property there. I only own about 2 feet off the road,
Okay,
but I might squeeze that line next year, there's no owners up there.
okay.
Usually you can get away with it.
You're giving all our secrets away.
Sorry I asked that question.
We'll make the road a couple feet wider and see if we can't get a better shot.
We'll work
Yeah,
with
okay.
a potter or two.
Show them where the mute button.
The original fella give us that property and he wouldn't give me any more.
Okay, all right.
Well, that corner was tight.
I just wondered if any of
Yeah.
that type of material was in that price.
The right-hand ditch has been rewrapped, the whole
Yeah.
ditch, right up to, Maslin Road. And we do some riprapping in ditches. If we do, it does take more.
But we don't usually stockpile a whole lot. If we know we
No.
have a project
No.
coming up, it's not uncommon to see a stockpile come in here
Yeah,
and, or,
at the beginning of the yard there somewhere.
yeah. But we don't have a couple hundred yards just sitting over there in rock.
No,
Okay.
that can-
And that's relatively easy to get with a little bit of time and some.
Yeah, George Hall, anyhow, we'll truck it up to us, quite a few in the crushing business now. Yeah, they called around, we buy it where we can buy it the most reasonable. So that kind of gets through the material, besides the coal patching. There will be some guardrails put up on Youngtown Road this year. And little culvert work on the granite culverts. There's 3 on that road that need to be widened just a little. So there will be some guardrail work and culvert widening, and 3 culverts replaced on Youngtown Road, which is being tied this year. And then it goes down to storm damage. And we had a couple of weeks ago, storm damage in Moody Mountain, a little up on Maslin Road. And Moody Mountain washed 2 feet from the top of the mountain clear to down to 173 almost. The next time we have a heavy rain, I'm gonna ask the snowplow crew to get out and push the snow back to the ditches anyway, best they can. But if we have rain Friday, then the rest is salt building, maintenance and everything.
Yeah, so working down the rest of the page, Brendan talked a little bit about storm expenses. Trash removal, we have trash services at Breezemere Park, Duck Trap, and Lincolnville Beach. Sand salt building maintenance, we have a sand salt building, we have to do hopefully just routine maintenance to it. We have electricity there. Street signs, unfortunately, some of them seem to sprout wings and fly on an annual basis. We do buy new ones, plus the crosswalk signage that we have on Route 1 and the one here in the center. those might as well be sacrificial lambs put out in the middle of the road to just get run over. They are designed to be hit and flop back up, but like anything, you can only hit something so many times before they're disposed of.
How long do those usually last?
A season.
Half a season.
And one of them just gets taken almost every year, and we've been fortunate that we've had a Waldo County deputy that's been able to locate sign periodically and calls and say, "You missing a sign?" Yep, we are. We get them back.
I've seen a few missing this year. That happens about quite often. Finally, will be asked to put them back up.
Oh, and the road signs.
Stop signs and road signs.
Paving, Bernard alluded to, and I guess I did too. In keeping with our road surface maintenance plan, Youngtown Road is up. Youngtown Road is one of our longer
Yeah,
stretches of road. It's gonna be a pretty good project for some.
been there 3 miles, I think.
Yeah, I think it's 2.8.
Yeah, something like that.
And the last thing on page 15 is winter road maintenance.
Yeah, that's,
We have a contract with Farley Inc. to do the plowing and sanding. They also do the beach parking lot. We provide winter sand. We budgeted for 4,500 yards. And we provide salt. We budgeted for 950 tons.
Are we getting a bulk discount or something? Is that why it's $15 cheaper? Is that just seasonal variation or yearly variation
Which one are you talking about?
for
I
salt?
couldn't quite hear what you.
Salt, we don't have any idea what that price will be.
Just whatever.
We actually bid that out jointly with primarily people, communities in Knox County. The Knox County Administration Office does that and asks us if we want to participate on an annual basis, and we do. We're not obligated to take that price, but the price is always pretty good. That price carried in the budget is higher than what we're paying this year from the low bidder, but lower than the other 3 bids we got. So it seems that periodically we get a different vendor for whatever reason. It all comes out of Searsport to us. Different name on the check, but same salt.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions for Bernard while he's still here, or me while we're? Run now, Bernard, run now.
No one's speaking up too
Yeah.
quick, are they? They either fell asleep while we were talking.
That's part of the plan.
Thanks, Bernard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard.
Well, very good then. Glad to meet you people. Some of you I don't recognize and some I do.
20 more years of this, Bernard, you'll know everybody.
I ain't gonna live forever.
Let's not have that conversation. All right, we're gonna get quickly, or hopefully quickly, back on schedule here.
No one's taking the chair.
Nope. The next page is our Public Works transfer station budget. We are, the town of Lincolnville is a member of the Midco Solid Waste Corporation, which is a 4-town cooperative effort with Camden, Rockport, and Hope for the transfer station located in Rockport. That has a separate board of directors, which include Dave Burrows and Kern Late. And they have set the budget and told us what our assessment will be $93,013 for the coming year. No changes proposed in bag fees or anything for the coming year that I'm aware of. Anybody have some questions about that? Not like we can do much about it, but we can give Dave and Karen a hard time.
Do they apportion based on town population?
It's a combination of population and valuation. It's half based on population and half on valuation. A number of, well, a long time ago now, because it was before I showed up, they have the paper bag, so you know everybody's buying yellow bags or paying their trash man to go across the scales. So really the amount, in theory, the amount used to be the kind of the, how do I say this nicely, to have the towns pay for past poor decision-making. We occupy a quarry down there for the construction and demolition debris landfill, and there are some long-term costs associated with that decision that was made long before most of us to do, and even once that quarry is closed, we're gonna have some long-term costs, so that's kind of where we're at.
Does part of the budget take that into consideration? Are you putting long-term costs in this budget to build up a fund for when you do need to?
We're not, they are.
So is part of these dollars that everyone contributes to that
Yeah.
end of life fund, so to speak?
The paper bag, the $2.50 you pay for a garbage bag, is supposed to cover the cost of actually disposing that trash.
Mhm.
It actually covers more than the cost of disposing that trash, and they're setting some monies aside so that in the years that it doesn't cost, that it doesn't cover the cost, then they can subsidize it themselves. So we don't have bag fees going up, you know, to $2.53. It's $2.50 for a longer period of time. In addition, the fee schedule corporation is set up for the landfill itself. They are setting aside monies for closure. But even once it's hoped that when we get to the point where the landfill is ready to be closed, there will be enough money to physically close it, cap it. But even after it's capped, we're gonna have ongoing cost of monitoring and pumping out leachate. Hopefully the leachate being the dirty water that's in the trash or in the waste. Hopefully that will be diminished by the cap itself. I mean, that's the whole theory behind the cap. And then there's inspection costs and reporting costs and whatnot. Right now, the way that set up, those funds are unlikely to be in the bank. You will recall last year we got some additional funds returned to us when our contract with PERC ended. Our trash used to go to Orrington to a waste energy plant. And our contract ended, and we now send waste energy plant in Portland to EcoMaine. We had a windfall, the 4 towns. Lincolnville chose to take that money and set it aside in a separate reserve fund. So we have a pool of, how much money? A couple $100,000?
About 270, I think. 240, 270.
So that money is there. There was some conversation when that money came back about giving that to Midco Solid Waste to keep in a reserve, but the 4 towns couldn't agree to do that. So everybody got their money back, and I think three of the towns are prepared to, you know, move forward with that money going to Midco's. The 4th is a little reticent at this point.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone? Any others? I think we can turn the page to Public Works Harbor. Shall I talk about Public Works Harbor, Madam Chair, or shall we wonder where our infamous harbor master is? Why don't I do it and keep us on?
You did last year, so why not?
Why not? All right, Public Works Harbor, page 17. We have 3 harbor masters. We have 2 marine, which is the harbor master and the assistant harbor master. And we have the inland harbor master also under Public Works Harbor. We have an inland harbor master that does our lakes and ponds. Those are all slated with the 2.8% change, as well as FICA and Medicare. For the harbor, we have 2 hoists or winch there to lift things from down below up onto the pier. We have $1,000 budgeted for that. Should any maintenance, well, we have ongoing maintenance, but any maintenance be required. The pier repair itself, maintenance, there's a breakdown down below of our best estimate of where that money will go. Labor, float maintenance, moving and storage. We take some of our floats out seasonally and they go to Owlsboro. So they're hooked up and by outside entity and then removed by the same outside entity. Boat use is if we contract for a boat for any of our operations. Mileage, we do pay mileage. You'll see that throughout the budget at the IRS rate for town use of a personal vehicle. Materials, guest moorings, electrical repairs, storm damage repairs, mowing and snow removal, our guest mooring inspections that we have done, decking repair. There's been some discussion and debate about doing a larger decking project that we have not got to the point where we've actually proposed doing that. So we have monies in here. We've done a couple of various individual plank removals in the last couple of, last year anyways, to keep it safe and convenient for people using it, not having holes. And then we have a budget line item for we have an incline that we removed a couple of years ago, and we replaced that with a wider one. And we took the spare, what we now refer to as the spare incline, it's over here at the Public Works, and looking to redeck that so that if we needed it, we could put that in service in short order. Then we have electricity, we have lights there, and hydraulic motors for the lifts. Memberships and training for the harbor masters to attend the harbor master school if they go. Wave break survey. A number of years ago we put in a stone wave break there. We were required by our DEP permit to monitor the beach for either erosion or accretion, if that's the right word, build up, or if our activity has changed the shoreline. Shoreline changes constantly with storms anyways, and seasonally with the time of year. We have it surveyed every year in the month of May, and it's changed a foot out this year, 2 feet back, 1.5 feet up. Our activity hasn't changed. What's going on at the beach would be my estimation. And so there, I'll stop talking about harbor unless somebody has some questions.
David, can you speak to, or should we try to schedule, I'm just curious why we're looking at smaller numbers under general maintenance for labor, float maintenance, boat use.
I can speak to that. We looked back at what our experience has been for the last couple of years and tried to mirror that in the expenses we've listed this year. So much of this depends on what breaks or doesn't break. But we also switched, I can't remember if it was 2 years ago or just this year. We used to do a lot of this, for lack of a better word, in-house. We had the harbor master or assistant harbor master do some of this stuff. We switched to having Dark Harbor Boatyard do some of this stuff, and the prices are different, so we tried to mirror what they've been charging us to do some of this work.
Okay, so we're looking at generally half as expensive or more in some cases. Are these numbers that you and Kayla put together? Or are these numbers?
No, Mike and I did these.
Okay.
Mike being the harbor master, Mike Hutchins.
Yeah.
Just.
Okay.
I know you know that, but maybe not everybody else. the bottom of this page does have a rough outline of what we do and when, and how we pay for that. Anyone in? Are they here?
They are.
Oh.
They're heading to the conference room.
Sure. We're moving on to recreation, which is on page 18, and Kayla's just run out to grab the rec committee. Paul, do you need a night out or something, or did we give you the wrong time?
I thought it was tonight.
It is tonight.
Okay.
All right.
People in the conference room, people in the map room.
People
Knocked on the wrong
everywhere.
door. Busy place tonight.
Stephanie, hello.
Hello.
Andrea, hello.
We have a full committee here tonight.
Oh, and Leslie's coming. Good.
Commission.
Holy moly. Hot seats all around. So recreation is overseen by a recreation commission, of which 3 members are here, and if anybody's interested in being on the recreation commission, this is a lovely opportunity to step forward and join them.
Okay. Leslie.
100% attendance tonight.
There you go.
Just make sure,
Plus we have a person from pickleball.
make sure that you have a microphone to speak into, please, and thank you.
So, we have a person from pickleball. Basically, these folks are here in case you have questions that I can't answer. We sort of divvied up tasks and areas of interest.
So while Leslie's getting organized, we're on page 18 in under Public Works Other, and maybe we could talk about Breezemere Park maintenance first, Leslie.
Okay, that's pretty much unchanged. That's been non-controversial. Can I skip around or do I have to stay on that?
Well, if you just maybe to explain for the benefit of anybody that's not familiar with Breezemere Park, what we actually do there, don't do there, where it is.
Well, maintenance is mowing lawns, and we'd like to add in some weed whacking. It's also taking care of the porta potties, moving those as needed, and the rubbish. For maintenance, it's certainly painting and doing picnic tables, things like that. The building's in good shape. And it's also obviously keeping track of the docks and how they're doing. But they're all new, and so their low maintenance is and no cost. Let's see, I see pickleball is in there as well.
Yeah, you're jumping ahead.
Okay, whoops, okay.
You did have at least what looked to me like 4 new ideas or thoughts for Breezemere Park. The ice rescue ladder, the
The kayak
canoe storage.
And I'll say a little bit about the storage unit. The boat club came to us and said, we'd like to share some space. We would build it, and where can we put it? And we'd have public access for a certain number of kayaks or canoes, and they would have the other half. And so we decided it couldn't be right in Breezemere Park because it's a green space. It's all where it was suggested it would go. It was right in the middle of the snowmobile trail, so that didn't seem like a good idea. So, long story short, it's being moved. It's being conceived of going in the boat trailer parking lot, out of the way, but fairly close. So, and it would be half and half. They would, as I said, do the labor, and we would spend $200 on wood. And that actually goes to our first of 3 mandates for values, and that is public access. So it seems like a good thing. We'll have to work out some details about whether we charge at all. Camden or Rockport, I believe, charge. I think Camden charges way too much. It's like $150 per season. That just seems like really crazy. We also have to think about whether we want to register or just have people put their boats there and walk them down. That could be a sign, you know, that they're responsible, that sort of thing. But anyway, that's the plan that we've come up with. Any questions on that?
How many boats even for
I
storage?
think it might be maybe 18 or something.
Yeah, I heard
Something
it.
like 9 and 9. Yeah,
How many?
9 for us and 9 for them.
How much of the parking lot is that gonna take up?
It's just along the edge by Gina Sawyer's, that end, until we get, there's enough grass and weeds and stuff to tuck it right in there.
Right along
We're
the tree
thinking
line.
perpendicular to Norton Pond Road, tucked up right, so then you still have your trailer parking. But then right at that far end in front of Gina Sawyer's property is right there. So not, the War Memorial is up here on a roll.
And who's going to get to store their boats there?
Well, it's, oh, go ahead.
You could speak.
It's partly the boat club,
Uh-huh.
and then they said that the town of Lincolnville people could use half of the space and then half for the kayaks to not have to be transported by the kids across busy Route 173. So at the point of regulating who gets the space first is still sort of being hashed out. It's kind of more, the location was the first sticking point, because they really wanted it up against the tree line against, what's his name?
Swan.
Ray Swan. And I, that was not a good idea. It's just really invasive of the green space. So it's really, that's the only spot to try to accommodate the boat club's wishes.
Was there any talk about how secure this would be as far as being able, let's just say Joe Q taxpayer puts their kayak or canoe there, how do they fashion it so they know it's not gonna be taken by someone who really has no right to have access? I mean, is there any consideration for that?
We talked about it a little bit, and, you know, my thinking, my point of view is if we start charging, then that puts us liable as a town. So there's gotta be some kind of way that we would, you know, it's a bigger conversation that needs to be had about how to manage. Do we provide secure, you know, location? Is it use at your own risk? How do we manage, you know, who can use it, so that we maintain access? So it's a bigger conversation that we haven't had yet.
Or need help having.
It also, the other two values for our committee, the second one is safety, and it really does honor that by not having kids crossing 52 with boats from the boathouse, or, you know, from the boat club. And the third is respect for neighbors, and so certainly putting it not right next to Ray Swan's house is a good thing.
Part of the concern is that the rack itself, I think, is 9 feet deep maybe. But by the time you put some of those kayaks on there, like my kayaks are typically 12 feet, 14 feet. So you've got to have room on each end, so you can't just push it right up against the trees at the end of the boat launch next to Ray Swan's, and so it comes out into the park quite a bit.
So with that measurement, one kayak, that would be about one and, well, that's 2 parking spots,
Right.
15 feet. So.
Yeah, we'd have to.
8-foot parking spot, that's almost 2 parking spots there, so you're taking up, and parking is at a premium there already, so, all right.
I don't think we're necessarily married to that. That's where it's gotta go. That's the latest proposal. It seems like a logical place, you know.
But I do think there's a fair amount of wild area right in there.
Yeah, I agree.
And once we get rid of that, Dave, I'm looking at you, that old dock that's there, either burn that or something, then we'll have a lot of room.
So you mentioned nine spots for the boat club, and then 9 for For whom?
For public.
The public, okay. And it still hasn't been determined how people would apply for those 9 spots?
Not
Like
yet.
a lottery or, okay.
No.
Would the boat clubs spots be secured for their equipment?
We haven't discussed that in detail. I would assume that they would secure it themselves. You know, personally, when I think about it, if I had my kayak and kept it down there, I'd put a bike chain on it. And I'd take it as my own responsibility to do that.
The rack could be fitted with eye bolts,
Mm-hmm.
and you just chain it down, and I'm sure the boat club, and I think the use at your own risk is the best way to absolve the town of any liability.
No, parking is a premium, and so the trailer parking lot, is that full a lot in the summer? I mean, I don't
It
go
gets-
down there in the summer,
Yes.
so. Cause I know the regular parking lot gets filled pretty easy, I wasn't quite sure about the trailer parking lot.
A lot of people go, just sort of put their boats in
And then park it there.
and then go through Norton Pond and Pelican, because they're realizing that Long Bridge and 52 down in Camden are small smaller parking areas than we even have, so.
And this is done in McGillicuddy Lake, right? Don't they have kayak racks there?
They have designer ones that are very fancy and very expensive. We're doing 2x4s, $200.
Yeah,
It's a pretty
pressure,
good deal.
the design that they showed us was pressure treated, 2x4 cross braces and I think 4x4 posts. And it's a pretty simple design. It's just,
They're
you
the
know,
ones at Rockport Harbor, correct?
Yeah.
that sounds right, yeah.
Yeah.
Just not to shut any conversation down, but I feel like a lot of this stuff is things that could be fleshed out in a
Absolutely.
recreation committee meeting and not necessarily at the
Yep.
budget presentation. So I feel like
Yeah.
it's a great idea. Maybe needs a little bit more work. This is an ongoing process, so this isn't necessarily the last time that we have to have this conversation. But yeah, so
Well, and I think the point is, you know, this is what we'd like to do.
Yep.
We'll hash out the details and make sure that, you know, the board is aligned with it before we move forward, but let's get it in the budget.
So next, let's see, athletic fields. No, I'm skipping here.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm really confused. How can you put money in the budget for something that is just a concept? It's just, it's not even a finished concrete project.
It's because the design is a clear, here's what they wanna do. And we think it's a great idea. We just need to work out the details about how do we honor the green space that we've got? How do we make sure it's usable? How do we not impede unduly on the parking lot? So it's mostly at this point just a matter of locating it.
Which sometimes we as a committee also need help from our selectmen to say, is this legal / appropriate / you know.
That's where my.
Yeah, like what do you guys even think about this idea?
Right, which, I mean, to be honest, and I'm speaking only for myself, I would have preferred to have heard this. I mean, would have, should have, could have, right? But, you know, preferred to have this come to the board at a, outside of the budget planning and worked through some of, you know, someone brought up the concept of liability, let's, you know, then we're talking about lawyer, like I can see like 2 or 3 meetings worth of select board meetings and furthermore, you know, your commission meetings outside of this process. Unfortunately, and you know, that this isn't necessarily the place to vet concepts. This is a place to talk about actionable expenditures that are fully functional. Yeah.
So we cross that out and move on.
So,
No, we don't cross. The problem is the Lincolnville Boat Club group just came to us with this. This is hot off the press.
and and I'm not, there's no contention that it isn't a concept that's worthy of having a conversation about, but I'll also refer to purchase weed whacker. We've had previous conversations at previous select board meetings, and I had a long laundry list of questions about who's going to operate it, is there liability, will there be safety equipment, where will it be stored, where will it be charged, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or will it be, you know, fuel operated, does this include a budget for fuel? So these are the things that I'm hoping you all have answers to when including purchase a weed whacker in the budget.
Well,
I don't think you like my answer, so frankly.
Well, if it's no, that's fine, but you know, it gets bumped back to answering those questions before taking up
I mean, it would then
budget
shift it
time.
to us doing, getting an estimate for what it would cost to have it done by one person professionally, so.
And we got that estimate at $95 per time at 22 times over the summer.
Is that in here?
That is, I saw the email, where there's so
I don't
much
think it
going
is.
on.
No, but is it in the budget?
No.
No,
We just got a quote 2 days ago, so did not.
Yeah, and I'm definitely, I'm not trying to pick on you guys, but I'm just saying that there's like conversations to be had now during budget presentations, and then there's conversations to be had outside and previous or prior to. So we could just, you know, if there aren't concrete answers, that's totally fine. We could just press pause and move on to the other stuff.
I do have the figure in here for Calder, it was $1,980 to do the mowing and weed whacking.
is that in here?
I don't know, it's in the most recent one that I gave.
It's not in the budget request, because your budget request said, memory serves me, was keep it the same as what we're doing now, at a third the cost.
Yeah.
Now you jump to athletic fields, I think.
Okay. The cost differential on those two, well, the big issue, I guess, for what we are asking for and what you should give us is whether you wanna go green or not green. And there's a $6,000 difference. So that's up to you, and I guess only knowable by what you agree to. Is that my understanding, or?
And where's the $6,000 difference lie specifically? Is that in which?
It's on the next page.
Okay. So we're talking about 26,823 for green application and
19,769 for non.
And does that just largely lies within the chemicals that are applied and hands-on? Okay.
And we also, if some equipment can be added to the school uses, then we can save some money. As I've said here, if we got a dethatcher aerator for $270 and edger for $150, then we could save, let's see, the core aerating is $1370. You know, maybe Karen, you know more about that than I do, but that saves some money. Are we doing the same? Do you have?
But
It's on the second page.
Second page. Oh, okay, good. So that's.
So first part of that is doesn't the school have an aerator? Because we were told they aerated the field for us.
Right.
Okay. And the other thing is there's a savings. Does that also include the additional labor that the school has got to budget for to have somebody do it? Because doesn't this say that the school the task is gonna be performed by the school? Because that's additional equipment and it would be additional labor.
Yeah, I think you can.
And does the school even know this?
I can butt in here. I've had 2 long conversations with Paul Russo in the last couple of days.
You too?
Yeah, me too. How many else have you?
Uh,
He told me that the school has the small equipment. The aerator can only be dragged by the tractor, which is too big. The big problem with those fields are drainage, which is going to be coming down the pike, is looking at the swamp that the school has to deal with. So he told me, because we also have the oversight of the shared responsibilities that we had looked at. In the past, we're trying to flesh out who does what, because that's what makes everything so complicated, is that it's a shared thing. So Paul said he would edge the ball fields with the edger, that it would be very simple. He also said that he, with this dethatcher, thank you, could help in the costs of, and he would have Alvin do it every time he did it. So Alvin's already doing all this work, and we just have this one extra $270 piece of equipment. So we're just line by line trying to streamline this, because it is so incredibly complicated with who's doing what, when, how. But according to Paul Russo, the drainage is the biggest problem. The wetness of those fields is completely ruins the mowers. But he says he has the mowers.
He says he has all the equipment.
If it weren't wet.
Yep, he says he has all the equipment, and it's not that he needs smaller equipment, which is the impression that I've had for the past couple of years, was that his equipment is too big and too heavy. What he's saying is, I've got all the equipment, I have all the manpower, I just can't get out there when the field is wet, no matter what equipment I have, because it's too wet and it's a drainage issue.
Okay. Move on.
Let's see, so we have pickleball. Well, that's quite an up and coming sport in Lincolnville. And it brings us to the question of, for the outdoor part of it, the big picture of eventually having, or asking for the tennis courts to be resurfaced. But we're gonna leave that for another day, because that would be fairly expensive, but I did put that in here in the estimate.
Sorry, can you say that again? You're not including resurfacing, or you?
I am asking for it, but, you know, just to have it sort of on record. I mean, what as a committee, what we would like to see done is, as we do in our personal lives, put aside money over like a certain amount per year to have it add up, so that then we have the money to resurface the tennis courts, which are good for tennis, as well as for pickleball. But I don't know if the town does that.
Oh yeah, we're doing it all
Okay.
over the place
Yeah.
through our budget. So is this $10,000 that is putting money aside for
Well,
future
no, we would be
resurfacing?
putting money aside to get to that point of 10,000.
How much
So-
is it to do it?
Huh?
It's $10,000 to resurface the court is the price that we got. It hasn't been resurfaced in 11 years. It's recommended to be resurfaced every 5. So $10,000 is a huge chunk of money. I assume that's not something we're gonna put into the budget in 1 year and get it done. It'd be great if we could do it in 2 years, and then moving forward, have, you know, $2,000 a year set aside, so that every 5 years we're prepared. But in the meantime, we're really behind on getting it done.
Yeah, thanks for making us aware. That's a long time.
That is a long time. So that's the simple part of it, is like, you know, here's how much it will cost. We're way behind, we need to get it done. We also need to do it fiscally responsibly.
Okay.
Are you speaking about the tennis court?
Just the tennis court.
Okay. Wait, you said pickleball, so
It's the same court. So one of the tennis courts would have some extra lining, and apparently, depending on how you do the lines, if you do it correctly, it can fade in. And so people playing tennis are not too distracted, but if you do it badly, it drives them nuts. So we're gonna try to do it in a way that's pretty respectful.
So you'd be taking one of the tennis courts out?
No, it would still be available for tennis.
coexist.
It's like,
They can exist on the same space, so you have,
No, I understand that, but I'm
Okay.
just thinking how you're gonna regulate it.
the plan is that there will be a lockbox on site, that will have the pickleball equipment. When someone comes to play pickleball, they will have their combination and they will take the equipment out. They will use it while they're playing. They will put it back when they're done because the nets aren't made to stand all the time. So you only take them out when you use them, and you only put them away when you're done.
Can you speak, so you mentioned that the tennis court should be resurfaced every 5 years, it's been 11 years. So, I mean, how are they right now? Last time someone played on them, were they usable?
We asked Greta to speak to that, so she's a pickleball person.
So, Greta Gleason, Searsmont Road. The courts have never had any resurfacing since they were installed, and one of the vendors that we called said that they were the people who put the surfacing on. And they said it was 2005, so we are now in 2019, and as Stephanie said, the maintenance is recommended 5 to 7 years is what I've seen. There are lots of little divots on it, and on both courts. I'm assuming, I don't know, maybe fireworks are set off on it, but you know, they're size of a penny or smaller, but they're multiple. And then also the paint surface is really worn away. So, you know, the tennis lines are not looking good. I'm concerned about the fact that the surface doesn't have its integrity, because obviously thawing and freezing, we're going to develop cracks. I did speak with Norm Poirier from the Belfast Recreation Department. They've just resurfaced their courts, and he said, you know, it's like any infrastructure. You have to look at short-term costs and long-term costs, and if we get to the point where that surface is cracked, then it's going to be those estimates to resurface that are going to go up. So our short-term goal is to get lines painted on one of the courts, so that we'd have 2 pickleball courts on one of the tennis courts for this summer. And we have a volunteer group that is willing to do the painting. And I would, you know, be a part of that and be willing to do it, knowing that there would be some plan to do a professional job going forward, but obviously that's going to take more money. I would not be willing to paint the lines. If the courts were in good shape, they would need to be done professionally. The tennis lines also are not
So
done.
the short term would be the volunteer labor would be to paint both the tennis court lines and the pickleball lines, or just pickleball?
Just add to what's there.
Add to what's already there.
With the pickleball courts, yep.
To go back to what you asked, is it a functional court right now and safe?
It's functional and it's safe. The integrity of it going forward is questionable. Yes.
Yeah, I get that.
And can I just add to that, the thing that I would say is, you know, any amateur can get out there and play. Anybody who enjoys the sport and really wants to play well is not going to come play on our courts.
Well, they probably would refuse to play on it.
Right.
Much like the ball fields.
So we need to, you know, that's, you know, it's safe, nobody's going to get hurt, but on the other hand, it's not in great shape.
You get funny bounces sometimes. So.
Yeah.
I understand.
What's the cost to paint just the pickleball lines with volunteer labor for
the
this?
estimate we have, I think, is $120.
Okay.
Then the other part of that is getting the pickleball equipment so that public has access to it. When I was doing the sessions last
Just make sure
summer-
to speak into the microphone, please.
When I was
Thank you.
doing the sessions last summer, I was using my personal pickleball net. When we play indoors, we use the school's equipment, but those are not sturdy enough to be outdoors.
Okay. And then the 587 for tape, paddles, and balls, does that include the lockbox that would be used
Yes.
outside?
Yep.
It does, okay.
And then the USAPA, United States of America Pickleball Association, has a grant program for locations that are introducing pickleball, and I would be willing to apply for that grant program, and that grant program, if awarded, would reimburse $250 of that pickleball equipment for qualified equipment, and the nets are qualified equipment.
Just one more question. Is that $125 built into this budget request?
I don't know what's, I haven't seen
I
that
think
budget
so,
request.
because this says tape,
No,
so
okay.
no,
It's-
120.
I
So-
just got my answer.
Okay.
He said it's not. Thank you.
We put the full 587 because it wasn't guaranteed money.
Okay.
Sorry.
So the other area that we didn't go into in terms of the athletic fields is the other expenses, including some maintenance on the dugouts and, Green Monster. Pretty expensive. Either of you wanna explain that, or do you wait until questions?
Wait, anybody,
Yeah.
questions?
No, might as well dig into it.
What do you wanna know? Well, I would say, you know, so the dugouts themselves need to be painted. And in particular, I'm thinking of the lower field, need to be painted and need shingles. And I do have an agreement from the Camden Co-ed softball that they will provide the labor to do the shingles, to do the re-roofing, if we provide the material. It was supposed to happen last summer and it didn't, and partially my fault, I didn't follow up on it, and my arrangement would be, you're gonna get it done before you plan on the field this year. So I'd like to see some regular exchange where they're helping out with the dugouts and the Green Monster in the painting and maintenance of it. You know, as far as the labor in exchange for being able to use the fields. So that leaves us with the materials, and then in terms of the Green Monster, that is plywood, and Andrea can speak more closely to that, because they've gone out and looked at it. Yeah, my partner Nick did a bid, and just so you know, the material costs just for the 30 sheets of plywood, and it was a lot of paint. Both sides had to be primed, it was 30 sheets, and then it's on either side. It was $1,500 for just plywood and paint. So that's to do, and if we got the labor, that would cut that bid down by half. Okay. So that was good.
So the 2,700 is the full price,
The
labor and
2,700,
material.
that was, you're right, that was the Green Monster rehab was the labor, and the material was only 1,500 for that. So she had. So I don't know, I didn't ask them to rebuild the Green Monster. You know, I specifically asked them to do the shingles. So, and paint.
Okay.
So. Right.
What is the general maintenance line item? What does that break out into?
Leslie, do you know what that is?
$3,539.
Maintenance.
General maintenance of the ball field, $2,539. Leslie, that's you.
Dave, do you know what that is?
That's a number copy from whatever you sent us, Leslie.
Yeah.
Put you on the hot spot.
No, I feel it, you said that to me, didn't you? Oh, just kidding. I think you did, actually.
I wonder, that probably includes, we share the cost of fertilizer, 50-50 with the school. So I wonder if the fertilizer might be included in that.
Could that be the cost of the shingles and the cost of?
The shingles and the roofing job was broken out and added to the shingle jobs that we had for.
Well,
I don't think.
why don't we just would you make a note to, we'll
Yeah.
loop back, because
We'll get back to
No
you.
notes.
air traffic control's getting nervous with the planes circling.
Running out of chairs.
So should we go, or?
Well, yeah, should we go?
Are there, I mean,
Are there more questions?
we've covered a lot of ground. I feel like there may be more questions, so I think we'll ask Kayla to follow up with you guys, maybe clarify some
Yeah,
things.
we'll-
I think she may, outside of this, be able to clarify things and then bring it back to us at our next iteration of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, can I just offer, this is my first experience doing budgeting as a member of the commission, and, so it's new to me. So, I've learned a lot. And, look forward to maybe next year having it be a little smoother, but, so what is the next step? So you guys, when does the budget get approved? That's my question.
Town meeting.
By the town.
The open portion of town meeting.
Okay.
And so we will go through at least 2 other drafts, maybe 3 other drafts of this, where once we've completed these 2 days of budget presentations and everybody's had their chance to basically plead their case for what they're asking the taxpayers to raise and appropriate for funds, then the select board goes through it and goes through it and goes through it and often has follow-up questions. And it has been recently the practice of the recent boards that I've been sitting on that we really look for utmost clarification, so that when we sit before the townspeople and say, this is what we're gonna put our mark on, that we can 100% say, we think your hard-earned tax dollars should go for this.
Okay, great. So if we spent a little time fleshing out some of these details, and adjusting or finessing some of the numbers, that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
And then I assume you'll share with the budget committee, because we do the same process as the select board does.
Yep.
So we make our recommendations, and then ultimately the town has the final say.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm just trying to get a sense of timeline. What's your timeline, so that we can interact with that?
Selectmen will be looking at all of these again
2 weeks.
13 days from now.
Okay.
So no pressure.
And then again 27 days from now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll get the selectmen's recommendations as well before we make our recommendations.
Okay.
We
And we
understand
might,
it's a big
depending,
chunk.
well, our committee might want to invite you to come to speak with us too if we have questions, but we'll have to see what comes up, flesh it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
you.
Thank you guys very much for all your efforts.
We're gonna talk.
Streamline all these chefs.
Who's next?
Veterans Park.
Oh, we're almost on schedule.
Same page.
I'm
That's
gonna talk really quick and do the rest of Public Works otherwise. We're all right on that one page.
Yep.
Working down from the top of the page, McGonagall Dams. Town of Lincolnville has been paying for a number of years 1/3 of the cost to maintain the east and west dams of McGonagall Lake. The dams are owned by the town of Camden. We had a goal long established to have $30,000 in the account. We're approximate balance of $27,000. The budget request right now is based on the same number of what we've expended thus far this year, plus the amount to get us back to $30,000, and that's subject to considerable discussion and debate in weeks to come.
Well said.
I'm gonna move faster. Lincolnville Beach maintenance. Down at Lincolnville Beach, we have porta potties there year round. We have a beach cleaning contract, which we're proposed to increase to $20 a day for the well, it's not quite 150 days, but pretty close. Spring and storm cleanup monies in case we have debris that ends up on the beach that is undesirable before we start the summer season. And beach cleaning supplies are things like trash bags and whatever else we need to make the beach go. Veterans Park maintenance, and I know I'm moving quickly, but Lily said we have people circling. We have the Veterans Park down here adjacent to the library. The Veterans Park Committee anticipates wrapping up their work in the coming year, and then have suggested a budget of $1,000 for ongoing maintenance and upkeep of the park. Septic disposal, we're required by state statute to have either a contract with a licensed facility or our own licensed facility to accept residential septic, which is the stuff they pump out of your septic tanks. We've chosen for a number of years to be contracted with Moore's Septic, and that dollar amount is included in the budget of $2,875. And that concludes Public Works Other, unless somebody has some questions.
Nicely done.
Wasn't it nice having a half-hour break from my talking? Let's see, Gary. We're now going on to page 21, which is boards and committees. Very short jump around on this. Gary is the chair of the Lakes and Ponds Committee, and you have his blurb cut and pasted into the budget, but he's going to tell you everything you need to know about lakes and ponds in 2 minutes or less.
2 minutes, that's great. No.
So from a budget standpoint, what we're looking for is to have the money that we had last year moved over to this year, and that might not be apparent from the write-up, but to make up the difference for the money that we spent last year, which was $66. And what we were asking for the bulk of the money for is a study to try to look at why we continue to have elevated bacterial levels in Norton Pond. And if you recall, the study that you approved last year was based on elevated rain events. And if you remember, last summer was a drought summer. So we did the initial baseline samples, which would be the dry time samples, and we got some indication that there are some elevated levels coming from Reserve Brook into the pond, but they weren't all that elevated. And then we were waiting for a rain event when we could go back and try to pinpoint where those elevated values might be coming from. One hint that we got was that just below the Beaver Dam, at the head of the brook, this is just where the marsh is backed up from, did have some levels that were close to the standard levels, so some of this might be from natural causes. So what we want to do is to continue with that study this year. The monitoring that was done on Norton Pond and at Breezemere and at the Drake's Culvert, I think that about 35% of the samples were above the standard. This is what the Lake Lincolnville Association does, and at the other one, it was, I believe, about 45%. So we're still seeing elevated values even in a dry season. The rest of our budget was for dealing with problems as they came up during the year, where we might need to do some additional monitoring or assessment if there was an invasive species problem that we wanted to try to track down, or if we wanted to develop some communications materials like the materials that I spoke about last night related to unencapsulated polystyrene docks and floats. So it's basically the same kinds of things that we had last year, since we didn't spend most of it, carrying that over to this year, if that's the way you operate, or having that amount again for this year.
I can't remember if I asked you this last year, and forgive me if, and I apologize if I did, but I can't remember the answer. So is any of this testing and monitoring redundant with what Paul and his group does? And if so, do we really need to do it if they're doing it to find the same results, or to find out what the results are?
We're doing that work in association with them, and actually they don't do the monitoring that goes upstream in the brook. They're doing the monitoring that shows we've got a problem at Breezemere and at the culvert. Okay. And actually, when we went out and did the base sampling, we went out together to do it, and I think it's likely that we would do it the same way in the future. And if we can actually do our monitoring upstream, on those days, when they're doing their regular weekly sampling, they have
The
a wealth of
comparison.
information. We're working together with them.
Okay, the other thing was, how would the information from the polystyrene particles, how is the information about that gonna be distributed to the taxpayers?
Yeah,
Does that apply with this request? Maybe it doesn't.
So no, the $250 that's here could be used for that
Okay,
if the town makes the decision that they want to develop some materials, print out some materials, and send them out. Our thinking was to do it as a targeted mailing to homeowners on the lakes.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Gary? Thank you, Gary.
Thanks for waiting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're almost back on schedule. Diane, why I talk? Why don't you come up, because you're gonna be next. To finish up boards and committees, Board of Selectmen, each selectman receives a stipend. We pay FICA or Medicare on that, and there's a small training fund so that if they go to continuing education or something like that, or the Selectmen's Fund, there's some monies available to them for that. Conservation Commission isn't looking for an additional appropriation. We routinely carry that money forward. That money we looked back a couple of years ago, wasn't town tax money. It was contributions made or grant received, and hence the request to carry that forward rather than roll it into undesignated fund. For the planning board, we provide a recording secretary paid on an hourly basis. We estimated the number of hours, and professional development if they need to go to, or if we have periodic trainings that are offered. You'll note with planning board supplies, budget committee, and board of appeals, we used to have small amounts carried within that for each one. For your notebooks and your copy paper, we've taken all that out and just put it in administration, and we'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow night. And that concludes boards and committees, unless somebody has some questions.
I do.
Yep.
What happened to the $35 for the Conservation Commission from last year to this year?
What happened to the $35?
We had
We
41.
probably lost it in our investments. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Unfortunately, December was a really bad month for
It
investment.
was really bad. Okay, just
We're
curious.
getting there again, though.
All right, turning the page, if there's no boards and committee questions, we're on to municipal support. The very first item is Historical Society, and we're joined by Diane O'Brien to run it down and tell us all about it
Historical Society.
in 2 minutes or less.
Okay, I can be quick.
No pressure.
We still exist, we're down there, we're rather thin ranks, but we have a lot of material stored in that historical site. I don't know how many of you have ever been down or have been down lately, but anybody is, you're always welcome to come, give me a call, go down and I'll show you around. We have a pretty extensive archive of Lincolnville material, old things, some not so old. We keep records of different committees and organizations as they either become defunct or they have material they want to pass on, so we have cartons of records, old records from all sorts of organizations. One of the things last year that we did was a timeline that replaced one that was there, and I had it printed, and it's a 15-foot banner kind of thing up there, which I really urge you to come and take a look at. It's kind of neat, and that was about a $400 expense. And then the advertising did it for us, printed it. Right now, I'm working on the website. I feel a real, this isn't an expenditure, but I'm just telling you what's happening. Feel a real urge to get a lot of that material from the cloud and out of that wooden building in paper boxes where it sits right now. It's got to get up there. And so I'm doing as much of it as I can. We have, when Brad Knight moved out of town,
And his family was one of the earlier settlers, and he had a tremendous amount of material. And he lent us Arno Knight's diaries. And this was a diary that was kept from 1870 when Arno was 21 till he died in the 1940s. Every single year. Wow, it's little leather books. Wrote every day, and he lived right up here at the night place where Norman Walters lives now. And it's about farming records, it's about people, it's really, they're fascinating. But there they sit, and you know, Brad might want them back. They should be scanned. And there is a way to do it over at the State Library. They have a machine that scans books, and you can do it for free if you can go over there and scanning machine for, you know, about 6 weeks. You can also hire someone. They will facilitate hiring someone to do it. I haven't really looked into it, but I'm thinking that might be something we ought to do. Because this material is, it's not going to get replaced, and it's
cool.
Neat stuff, and it just needs to be preserved and in a way that is successful.
What condition is that leather book in right
They're
now?
great. They're this big. They're 3 by 5 each one. They're all the same. He went out to Colorado and mined silver because the woman he wanted to marry, the family thought he wasn't worth anything and wouldn't be able to take care of her. And so he went out to make his fortune. The fortune got blown up in the mine and had to come back, but he did marry her, and that's all in those diaries. But it's fascinating stuff, and especially the things that pertain to Lincolnville. So, any questions about it? I really invite you all to come down. I wish people would come and see what's there. It's pretty neat.
So is that $1,000 for scanning?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we'll do with it. Yeah, and the Historical Society doesn't have, I mean, we're not, I would have to say, we're not a real active organization. We're not fundraising. We used to do a calendar for years. We did the community calendar, and that gave us enough money to open the museum in the summer. But, you know, with Facebook and everything, the community birthday calendar is not such a popular item, and we weren't really making anything on it, so we've stopped that. Unfortunately, because a lot of people miss it, but it wasn't worth it. So we do need, we do pay, well, actually, I'm not so sure we did last year. Normally, we would take that money and pay volunteers to open the museum, pay someone to be an attendant. Last year, we did it with volunteers. We're open 4 days a week. 3 afternoons a week, sorry, 1 to 4. And that's in the summer. Yeah. So, that's it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Diane.
Quick question, so if you hire someone to do scanning, they would go to the state library?
I think there are people over there that do it. We don't, well, I suppose we could hire someone here, but I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense. They know how to use the machine, and they think they're people that they contact. I have to look into that more, but it is, I think it's a service that the state library offers. Also, we can use a site they have to put all our material up in one place, but we own it. So we own only we have access to it, we Lincolnville. It's password protected for us, but it's on the state library's site.
Yeah.
That's another feature. So there's things to look into, but again, you know, we're pretty short-handed. So.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you. Almost. Next on municipal support is McGunnicook Watershed, and I think Paul was, thank you, I was going to. I know Paul's been here for like a half an hour.
Wake him up.
We found another meeting to join while we're waiting on us.
This is Paul Leeper. He's the executive director of the McGunnicook Watershed Association. Paul, they have your verbiage that you sent me the other day.
Very good.
And
so you have.
But they just got it today, so.
I will do the Cliff Notes version on that. The McGunnicook Watershed Association is asking for $3,600. That is a $200 increase from last year. Among the things we do, and I'll just sort of bullet them here, is we do weekly bacteria testing. at a number of sites, three of them on Norton Pond and then down McGonagall River and Hosmer Pond. We also do the Watershed Stewards Program, which we hire area students and train them up to identify invasive aquatic plants. We train them on doing water quality, water clarity, dissolved oxygen tests, phosphorus tests, that sort of thing. We do those tests bi-weekly. And then we also have our lake warden that helps out if the code enforcement officer needs a boat or something like that to go out to any island properties. And Dale, our lake warden, also will communicate with them if he sees a shoreline zoning infraction or something like that. So that's in general what we do for the town of Lincolnville. Quickly getting back up to the bacteria testing, you talked with Gary, Lakes and Ponds, about that investigation. We have been seeing elevated readings coming out of Missouri Brook now for a number of years. So we try to look at that. Unfortunately, that also outlets right onto Breezemere Park, where we also have some. This past year, we tested in Norton Pond 40 times, and approximately a third of those times had levels above the one-day limit that EPA sets. What we do then is go right back out, sample the next day, and get those tested. And most of the time what happens is that level is resided again. It's typically a rain event kind of thing that happens, and stuff washes in. That $200 increase we're looking for is primarily because the lab that we've been using for the last 25 years or so, that's over in Rockport, is now closed. And so we are currently in the process of trying to find another lab to use. I suspect very strongly that we will be now having to drive those samples to Augusta to the state lab. So that's going to be an increased mileage and possibly hourly cost for getting some of the watershed stewards to drive those samples over. So it was very convenient having that lab in West Rockport because volunteers can just bop them over there. If we need to resample, we could resample and drive them right over there, and we get the results within 24 hours. And that's the key to this whole program. If you have to wait a week for your sample results, the weekend has come, everybody's gone swimming, and you still don't know if you've got a problem or not. So it's the timing issue there. So. Yes?
Could you overnight the sample instead of having someone drive all the way to Augusta and get the results the next day?
We can. There's a very short holding time with those samples. So if we go out, and I think we have 11 or 12 sites, and we get those samples, get them over to FedEx them over to them. They get them in the morning, then they fix the samples. They're in the queue now. They may not be able to get to them in time. And that's, again, I'm still researching it. There's a couple of other private labs around that I might be able to get some better turnaround on. The Maine Water Lab said they'll be using folks over in Lewiston. When I talked to them for a long time last September, and it turned out that I was going to have about a 3-day turnaround from them, even if they picked them up in West Rockport and took them down with them. And that's it. Well, we'll have to change our whole program if we have to do that. So, but yes, overnighting, if it's going to work and I can get that turnaround, that would definitely work. So it's still going to be water samples at FedEx. In my other job as an environmental consultant, that's still upwards to $80, a box like that, sending it overnight. So.
I'm just curious, why did Maine Water close that lab?
I think they're consolidating their resources. Maine Water used to be Camden Rockland Water Company. There's Maine Water. Maine Water is now owned by a multinational corporation.
Okay.
And they have a bigger presence and a bigger headquarters in southern Maine. And then I think their eastern U.S. stuff comes out of Connecticut. So, but I don't work for them. I just got the word last September when I took the samples over, and today is my last day here.
Okay. Any other questions for Paul? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Cemeteries. Cecil Dennison is the chair of the cemetery trustees, who isn't here, but did, and is also a member of the budget committee. He also gave us a request for the same, I think the same amount as last year. For cemetery maintenance, we maintain, or the cemetery trustees oversee, although the town has no town-owned cemeteries, the cemetery trustees oversee the, what we might call an abandoned cemetery or an ancient cemetery that nobody else is doing the maintenance on. We see that they get mowed. We are required by statute to do certain maintenance activities to veterans' graves and putting out flags for Veterans Day and Memorial Day, and bringing them in, but it's primarily maintenance of ancient and abandoned cemeteries. So I'll try to answer some questions. Come on up, Cindy, Kathleen, the time is close.
Any questions regarding cemeteries? Alrighty.
Joining us now and with us, Kathleen Oliver and Cindy Dunham from the Lincolnville Community Library. We're pretty close back on schedule. I will say that Cindy's explanation, which is on page 23, if you can read that, you're a good person. Should have requested that rather than handing us a letter that we had to scan, copy paste. That's all right. Our fault too.
Yeah.
But they can explain what they do with the money and what that actually says.
We can give you a brief rundown. Last year was the first time that we received funds from the town of Lincolnville. We gratefully received $3,000 in order to make a transition into having a paid director part-time, 10 hours a week. We've been very successful this year because of that transition. It's been really wonderful for the library. Not that we weren't doing great, but you know, new energy comes in with a new director. That's been terrific, and the $3,000 really helped us balance the budget between the fundraising and the donations that we receive and what we needed in order to meet that requirement. And lucky us, we got Elizabeth Udi for our director, and she puts in far more than the 10 hours we pay her for, I can tell you. So that's what we're requesting again this year. We went through our budget and came up with the same proposals for next year. In terms, we're able to keep our expenses pretty much where they have been right along in terms of running the library. And another $3,000 this year would again plug that hole for us where we are paying for the director that's been so successful. We continue to fundraise all year round. I'm sure you hear about our fundraising efforts, and on a personal level and on a community level. So our big events are still our Memorial Day plant and book sale, our summer auction and picnic, which is really our most successful fundraising effort each year. We get a fun crowd of people, and Rosie comes and auctions off the wonderful things that people donate to the auction, and that's been terrific. And additionally, we have in the fall membership drive for Friends of the Library, and that has been extremely successful. People in town are really generous with the library. We're always looking for new fundraisers, and our Friends Committee is always out there trying to figure out some new way to make money. One thing that's happening this week is that the Belfast Co-op holds what they call Common Sense Roundup, and whoever purchases is invited to round the amount up, and then that amount is donated to an organization that the co-op board has approved of. Everyone makes a submission, as we do to you, and then the board votes on who will be the donees. And so we are this month, February, up at the Belfast Co-op, and we're very excited about that. Not only is it great publicity for our library, but it's a fundraiser that we didn't have to kill ourselves to do. We did put together promotional material and bookmarks to give out to people there that have our library hours and information on them, etc. So that's a new one this year, and we're excited about that. In addition to that, we did this year start an endowment fund for the library in the hopes that we can build it up to the point where we'll be able to draw money from the endowment for operations of the library. We are over the moon excited about the fact that we have $60,000 in that fund already this year.
Great.
And we now have that money at Vanguard, and it's being invested so that it can grow, and hopefully, we don't plan to draw anything off the endowment until it reaches $200,000, at which point we feel we will be able to take some income out of it. But that's been an exciting big step for the library to guarantee its operation in perpetuity. One of the things that has happened that we talked about last year as a result of our receiving monies from the town is that we were allowed to apply for sales tax exemption. And yay, we got it. So we're really happy about that. When we buy books and whatever else we need, we no longer have to pay sales tax on it. And having municipal funding was the key to that piece. New things happening at the library are we're always out there looking for grants we can apply for that will enhance what we have to offer. We've received a couple of grants this year. We received one that enabled us to buy new equipment that would enable us to offer even faster internet service. And now we are faster than we've ever been before. So we're excited about that. A lot of people use our internet service. A lot of people in the parking lot use our internet service, and we're thrilled with that. That's why we're here, is to help people who don't have it at home or don't have it fast enough or for whatever reason need to get information. And of course, that's the library's purpose. So that was an exciting grant. We also received a grant for, well, one of our new programs this year at the library has been a writing group, a group of people who get together 2 Fridays a month and share their personal writing with each other in an effort to have a sounding board for what they're writing and to grow personally and professionally with what they're writing. As an add-on to that, we've received a grant to hire an expert in memoir writing and personal writing, and she is going to come in and teach a course to people that will be available to, I think it's a limited size, but it will be available to the residents of Lincolnville, and there will be no fee for the course because of the grant. In addition, we're in the process, and we know we're going to get it, of receiving another grant to expand our collection of main fiction and nonfiction books. We try to focus on specific areas of the library collection that need additional resources, and that's what we decided on this year. And finally, we have really been successful this year in strengthening our volunteer corps. That was one of our goals. We have more volunteers, and they are putting in more hours, and that's what makes the library go around. 10 hours a week doesn't make it go around, but we sure appreciate the funding that we get to make those 10 hours happen. Anything else, Cindy?
Awesome.
Beautiful.
That's great.
Questions?
You killed it.
All right, that's what
Then you can talk later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Joining us next on the municipal support is the chair of the Memorial Day Parade Committee, Gary, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for what you've done in the past, and I don't think we've changed much. We'd like to continue in the future. I guess I'd basically leave it open. There's nothing drastic change at any time. So,
don't look at me. Yeah. So breakdown for Memorial Day is in the middle of page 23. Flags, speakers, minister, bands, wreaths, and meals. You're gonna eat well. Sorry. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Gary regarding Memorial Day?
No need for increase for inflation or anything like that?
no
Food, meals,
one,
anything?
No one has come forward and said, we gotta get more money. So,
Okay.
we love it. So,
Okay.
and for those that don't understand, the food is, that goes to the Rockport Masonic Lodge, and they provide for all the participants in the parades. I don't know if you know when it starts, but this whole thing starts at 7:30 in the morning, and it runs until about 4 o'clock that afternoon. There are people that are tied up the whole day. So it's just, so each town takes a share in that, in the food and stuff. So Camden, Rockport, and Lincolnville. So, and the wreaths, we have to buy the wreaths and that particular stuff. So, guess that's it. Yep, why look that time?
No, but I know it's coming.
Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rosie. Thank you.
No, it's not, it wasn't snowing when I came in, but.
Okay.
So.
Appreciate it. Nice to see your face.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Continuing down with municipal support, we have general assistance. Kayla's the general assistance administrator, and she'll explain to you her budget request and get us back on schedule.
All right, so I'm requesting 2,000 for housing, 300 for food, 300 for electric, 1,500 for heat, and 500 for miscellaneous, $100 for classes, and $60 for the Maine Welfare Directors Association memberships. There was an increase in the memberships because Karen and I have both been doing it. In case one of us is out, the other one can pick up on what's going on. We both go to the class normally together. We choose one that has the, I guess, best information for what we need. And this is quite a decrease. So overall, I'm requesting 4,760 this year, over the 7,630 last year. Looking back through the past 4 years, from 2015 on, we have not spent more than $3,500 and $7 in general assistance. So I figured it is also a line that according to state statute, we can always overrun if we need to and take it out of partial funds or other areas that we have funds, so.
That's good.
By the way, it has just started.
Now I'm gonna have to talk quick.
Could you get our windshields on the way out?
I've got
Pick up the wipers.
my little.
David's actually really good about that, and he does that for us often.
Oh, David.
Happy
Happy staff is a productive staff.
I feel so warm and fuzzy.
I'll get everybody's before you go home.
You're killing me.
Does anybody have any questions about general assistance? It is a state program that's administered locally. We do receive partial reimbursement from the state, provided we follow the rules.
All right, moving along.
Moving on. The remainder of municipal support is me. Moderator, we offer our town meeting moderators a small stipend for moderating meetings of $75. We budget for 3, not knowing how many we'll have and how many people will actually take the payment. Ballot clerks, a number of our ballot clerks volunteer, but we also offer to pay them if they prefer. We pay the minimum wage. Registrar of voters, primarily just expenses associated with registering voters for supplies and going to class to keep up the training that we're required to do. And let's see, what's left? Oh, LIA building maintenance, or LIA building. We received a $2,000 donation request from the Lincolnville Improvement Association. We do snow plowing and sanding of the parking lot for $1,545 a year. We have a security system there that monitors both intrusion and fire smoke. And building maintenance is a small sum of money to fix something should something break. We are in the process right now of having the entire building evaluated for us, for the town, for hazardous building materials that might be in there, the structural components, the heating components, the plumbing components, electrical, code compliance, you name it. We anticipate having the results of all that back about probably in the June type of time frame. So this is just monies if something should break that we're responsible for. Does anybody, that was a quick rundown of the remainder of municipal support. Anybody have some questions about any of that stuff?
I have the questions. I have to leave though.
It's snowing.
It's down as 6 to 8.
Oh. Well, it's almost 8 o'clock.
It's just on the other side.
Well, it's almost 8 o'clock.
No,
Yeah.
just on the other side.
Drive safely.
Yeah.
But if you could, budget some more time the next time.
We'll see tomorrow night, actually.
We'll do better.
We'll see.
Maybe.
Page 24 is provider agencies.
Wait, Dave, I had a quick question.
Whoops, yes.
Just a quick, on cemeteries, I'm a little confused, because it says here fiscal carrying over 7,000 from 1920, but then up here it's 6,000 on the budget request.
No,
Wait a minute.
On
the
page-
7,000 is the current amount in their checking account.
Oh, that's what's in there now.
Yes.
And they're asking there'll be another 6.
For an additional
For an
Oh,
additional,
okay,
yes.
just, all right, just clearing,
Yep.
clarifying that.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
That wasn't clear. I know I'm moving quickly because I'm
No,
trying
it's
to
good.
get you,
I'm
trying to get you
trying-
back on schedule.
Trying to stay
Yeah.
there too.
We're only 2 minutes off the schedule. That's not bad for me.
Yeah, it's really good, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Especially since the middle.
So, yeah, let's not sidetrack, we're focused now. Provider agencies is on page 24. By the town charter, the budget committee gets and receives the provider agency requests and takes the first crack at their recommendations, kind of reverse process from everything else. So, I don't know if the selectmen want any explanation from the budget committee about some of those, or if you just want to move on and do that diligently sometime yourselves.
I'm just curious about the new lines here. If you could give us a little
Somebody want to
synopsis of the new characters.
Well, some of the new characters, for example, the community health and counseling, the budget committee didn't feel that was appropriate to support, so that's why we didn't recommend any dollars for that. And then the other new one, Habitat for Humanity, the budget committee felt that was a good project for them. They're gonna actually put like a store that will help community residents buy building materials that are like used building materials at a lower cost, so we thought that was a good thing for the community to have, so we would like to support their request. And then Life Flight Foundation, we did increase they requested $750. The committee thought that was a very worthwhile service, and we thought we wanted to give a little bit more, so we were saving more money on some other stuff. We're actually $600 and change less than what the actual formal requests were that came in for the provider agency, so we felt that we really should give them a little more support. We know a few examples recently that they service community members, so we thought that was good to go forward. And then let me just go. There was one Broadreach Family and Community Service, their request is $500. We wanted to support them, we had more questions, we invited them to come to the committee and speak with us, they didn't show. But we wanted to give them something, so we recommended $200 out of the 500.
So did they go through, they submitted the application and the.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah,
full
we
petition.
had, last year
That was
too,
my
we
question.
support them.
Everybody met the criteria.
We knew about them, but we
Yes.
wanted a little more detail.
No.
We thought they served the members of the community, but the committee did have some questions and they didn't show, but we wanted to give them something.
Okay. Sorry, there were two
Yeah, I'm
questions
sorry.
happening. No, that's okay, but I wanna hear the answer.
Yeah, the question that I had, so everybody can hear it, is all of the requests, or the provider agencies that had requests for full monies, did they fulfill their obligation for the application process, and were they on time?
Right, so do you want just the ones that the budget committee is requesting funding for, or do you want all of the ones that we have on the list that made a request?
I just wanna know the ones that didn't
Okay.
fulfill the request.
The American Red Cross did not do a petition or submit an application.
So,
So the budget committee did not request funding for them this year. Belfast Area Children's Center did submit the application. Their petition was set because they got funding last year. Broadreach did do their petition again and did do their application. Same with Camden Area District Nursing did their application. Community Health and Counseling only sent us a free-form letter. So the budget committee did not request funding for them. Habitat for Humanity did do their petition and their application as requested. Health Equity Alliance just sent us a free letter. They did not do a petition or an application. Lifelight did do their full application. New Hope for Women did do their full application. Penn Bay YMCA's they did not make a request. They're only there because they got money in 2018. Spectrum Generations did do their application. Waldo Community Action Partners did do their application. Waldo County YMCA has never done a petition. Last year at town meeting, they were wrapped up when the request was changed at town meeting for the Red Cross and the Waldo County YMCA. So the way that the application reads is if you receive funding in the past, you don't have to do the application or the petition. So they have never actually done a petition, but they kind of fell in where they got funding without it, so it didn't read that they needed to do it this year.
Okay. So for the American Red Cross, technically, if they had filled out an application, they wouldn't have to do a petition because they were funded last year?
Technically,
But
how
now-
it's written.
Okay, now last year, I forget, did American Red Cross submit an application?
They did, it was late, and Melissa had to email them 4 or 5 times to try to even get it.
Okay, and this year?
This year, we sent a reminder to everyone, but we did not.
also, members of the
babysit.
budget committee who had some contact with the Red Cross spoke to some of the higher ups and said they needed to do, the local person needed to do this, and it never happened, so.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any more questions on provider agencies tonight? Okay. Capital improvement programs, page 25. Wow. The capital improvement program is just that, improving our items. Fire truck fund, the request is continuing at $20,000. We are looking to go out to bid for a fire truck in the current year. Actually, that will be out shortly for purchase in FY20. We should have the funds available, and we're preparing for the next truck 7 or 8 years from now. Well, might as well talk a little bit more about the fire truck. We have in the recent past received donations from the Lincolnville Community Foundation, which was formerly the Lincolnville Volunteer Fire Department, Inc., that pays for approximately half the truck. The town pays for the other Harbor improvements, we're looking to replace the east end float in the upcoming winter season. So next year at this time, hopefully that'll be constructed for placement in spring of 2020. We budgeted $20,000 on the capital improvement program for that float. The selectmen last night asked that I correspond with the town of Owlsboro for a harbor donation. The requested amount in the current year was $15,000. They gave us a $15,000 donation. We're in hopes to receive the same amount in the coming year, which would go into the harbor improvement fund, or the harbor fund, and at the end of the year gets rolled into harbor savings. Road improvement, we still have 8.4 miles of gravel road and 26 miles of paved road. The concept behind road improvement fund is to build up some monies and then we go and improve a road up to a better standard. Recent projects, this past year we did a stretch on North Coptown Road. And the year before we did the large culvert project on Slab City Road that we got a partial grant for. I think Bernard, if he was still here, would tell you he'd like to have all 8.4 miles paved, just because it makes it a whole lot easier to upkeep and maintain. And I think a lot of residents on gravel roads, maybe, I'm certain not all of them, but, I know a lot of people in about a month will be screaming at us for the condition of our gravel roads. And if I lived on one of those roads, I'd scream too. Sorry. Building repair fund. We're looking to set aside monies for major building repairs. This past year, you'll recall, we looked to set aside monies in hopes to do some siding and some roofing, particularly to the LIA building. We went back and looked to transfer that into a special town meeting, LIA building maintenance, so we could hire all these consultants to tell us all the things that are wrong with these buildings before we go spend the money to fix them and find out we threw good money after bad. And the solar array purchase, as I alluded to in the opening remarks, we have solar array adjacent to the center fire station, available for purchase in January 2022. Estimated cost of purchase would be $61,500. The solar array committee recommended that we set aside $20,500 a year for the next 3 years so we'd have money available to purchase. This isn't a decision to purchase. If things change between now and then, the money doesn't have to be spent for this, but it will be available to be spent for this if it's approved and we have the money. And the committee had recommended this primarily to maximize our long-term savings. That was a real quick run-through of capital improvements. Does anybody have some questions if they want to talk about any one of those items? You will note, one of the things I wanted to point it out is in the expended column through the end of December, it looks like we've spent all that money. We've actually just taken the money out of the right pocket and put it in the left pocket. So if somebody looks and says, have you done the beach fire station and the LIA sewer connection for $15,000? No, we have not done it, but we have taken the money from the capital and put it over. We have it all. Looks like it's expended, but it hasn't been expended. And we are ready. We're ahead of schedule. What's that?
You're not done yet?
No, he's not done yet.
No, the last item on tonight's list is page 26, which is debt service. In 2008, the town borrowed $850,000 for road improvements. We borrowed that money over 15 years, so we're gaining. The last payment will be in fiscal year 24, or 2024. Principal payment that we've pledged our full faith and credit that we'll pay is $56,667, and the interest for the coming year is $8,683. Don't have much choice. If we don't pay it, guess what? We're gonna end up paying it. What's that? Yeah, somebody come foreclose on the road. Gary's got a question.
Just quickly, has the town ever looked at like refinancing the debt in the past?
We actually did, we borrowed that money through the Maine Municipal Bond Bank, and when you borrow money through the bond bank, they tell you when you can refinance. And they actually reissued that debt, I think the notes in July of 2015.
Okay.
And our net savings was $16,084.06. So, we looked into it prior, because a couple years prior to that, they did the school, refinance, or reissue the bonds, or whatever they do, the bank magic. And we were like, well, gee, what about our road bond debt? And they said, yeah, well, read your fine print, and we'll tell you when you can do that. And then a couple of years later, they did that for us, and saved us some substantial money. And that, unless you have some questions, that concludes 4 minutes early. No, more than 4 minutes early.
Thank you, everybody. Anything
for
else? Any
persevering.
follow-ups? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you very much.
All right.
And then other than the fire chief,